the first unit in discussing Midrash is just getting to know the rabbinic bookcase. And with the rabbinic bookcase, I don't mean what the rabbis wrote, but what rabbis had sort of on their book, on the shelf.
Like access to.
Access to, right. So we're talking about the rabbinic library. And I wanted to show how the same topic is handled in different ways. What is the style of the language and the issues that are important in different periods. Not for all of them I was able to find the same topic. And I chose the topic of Pesach. It's one of the topics that also when we get to the development of Midrash Halacha, we will see that this is a classic example why the rabbis needed to edit the Mishnah. Because at the time where Halacha was learned directly from the Torah, through Midrash Halacha, and so if you were looking for the halachot of Pesach, someone asks you, okay, can you tell me the laws of Pesach? So wait a second, okay, so it's in Shemot chapter 12 and in chapter 20, and it's also in Vayikra, in Leviticus chapter 23, and in Bamidbar chapter 9, and so basically you have to pull stuff from all over the Torah, and that's why the rabbis had to come and put it together thematically in the Mishnah under the the label of Masechet Pesachim, a tractate of Pesachim. So we look at Shemot chapter 12, and the Torah says the following: "V'achelu et habasar balayla hazeh, tzeli esh umatzot al meorim yochlu." They shall eat the flesh in that night, roast with fire, and unleavened bread with bitter herbs. They shall eat it. Shivat yamim matzot tochelu, ach bayom harishon tashbitu sorim batechem. כי כל אוכל חמץ ונחתה הנפש עם ישראל מיום הראשון עד יום השביעי. The translation says 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. On the first day you shall put away leaven out of your houses. For he who eats leavened bread from the first day until the 7th day, that soul shall be cut off from Israel. And then I'm going to do the next verse. It's about doing work or not doing work. But these are characteristic to most of the material in the Torah that speaks about Pesach. It's legal text. It gives us details. We think that it's pretty detailed, right? No, not enough. What is missing? What is it doing? What are the things that when you look at the text here, you would say are missing?
It doesn't mention the definition of leavening.
Okay. Or what is the definition of matzah, right? How long does it take the dough to become leavened, right? Which we know today is
18 minutes.
Yeah, which is complete myth. It's not 18 minutes. This is what is printed on all the matzah boxes, but it's not. But what we automatically associate with legal language, which are definitions, quantities, and measures, are not mentioned here. Even the time of when do you eat it? Balayla hazeh. And then it says ba'erev, at night. So is it night, the evening? What is exactly happening here? So it's true. A lot of these are missing. Still, it's a legal code. We know, of course, that there's a lot of discussion of the Exodus itself and the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim. Fine, but this is what we have in the Torah. We'll look at and another legal source from the Bible that we don't have that much. That is an interesting thing, that when you look throughout the Tanakh, the Nevi'im, Ketuvim, prophets, and scriptures, and you look for descriptions of legal practices, there's almost nothing. We could find an indirect reference by what the prophets rebuke the people for not doing. You don't do this, you don't do that. But we ask, what do you do, right? Like, how do you put on tefillin? It's never mentioned. How do you celebrate Shavuot? Never mentioned. How do you celebrate Sukkot? Mentioned once or twice. And the one place that it's mentioned in the book of Nehemiah is not. It's not the way we celebrate it today. So a very, very little information on the actual day-to-day religious life of Jews of not Jews, Israelites and then Jews at the time of the Bible. So we have this entry from Divrei Yamim. Would anyone want to read? You want to read in the Hebrew, the English? Yes, go ahead, Lily.
וישלח יחזקיהו על כל ישראל ביהודה וגם איגרות כתב על אפרים ומנשה לבוא לבית
השם
בירושלים לעשות פסח לאדוני אלוהי ישראל. And Hezekiah sent to all Israel and Judah and wrote letters also to Ephraim and Manasseh that they should come to the house of the Lord at Jerusalem to keep the Passover unto the Lord, the God of Israel.
Okay, so we can continue with the English. Because
for the king had taken counsel and his princes and all the congregation in Jerusalem to keep the Passover in the second month.
Wait, stop, Josh. Oh, that's why they took counsel, because it wasn't on time. That comes after a major renovation, like they say in the next verse, for they
could not keep it at that time, because the priests had not sanctified themselves in sufficient number, neither had the people gathered themselves together to Jerusalem.
So, like I said about the general practice, we finally find a description of a celebration, and just, we didn't make it on time to Jerusalem, we'll just do it on the second month. Are they referring to what is called Pesach Sheni, the second Pesach, which is one day? We don't know. Let's continue.
And the thing was right in the eyes of the king and of all the congregation. So they established a decree to make proclamation throughout all Israel, from Beersheba even to Dan, that they should come to keep the Passover unto the Lord, the God of Israel, at Jerusalem. They had not kept it in great numbers, according as it is written.
Okay. Yeah, right. Look at the Hebrew, the last line of Pasuk Hey. What does it say? Kilo larov. Okay, and it was it's translated. Okay, the translation is some is mine, some is not. This is not mine. For they had not kept it in great numbers, according as it is written. But the Hebrew might suggest kilo larov, not frequently. Larov, many times, not many. It's not about the number of the people.
Rabbi.
Right. It's not about the number of the people. It's about the number of times they did it, and it makes sense with the text, because they're sending message. Please come to Jerusalem to celebrate Pesach. We haven't done it in a long time. So even something that is we think is so central to our faith and to our practice, this the Shalosh Pesach, we find here that was not done. But we just see the I would say casual description of a certain practice, without saying, without making a comparison to the text that we know, right? Without detailing how come they didn't do it. When they say Kilo Larov Asuka Katuv, what is this? Was it a sin? Was it a deliberate? What is a shortcoming? We don't know that. Any comments on what's intriguing in this text?
Verse 5 just makes it sound like just do it whenever you can.
Right? Lasot Pesach. You're right. Just come and do the Pesach. We didn't do it the first time, so come now and we'll do it, and that will be fine.
Well, what was going on, like, historic? I mean, like, I'm a little off in where we are, like, in history. I mean, was it just that there was a threat, and that's why they couldn't?
We don't know that. Hezekiah is the king in the time of Yeshayahu. Mm-hmm. It's the same time that Sanherib, the king of in the 7th century before the Common Era, when the 10 tribes were exiled to Assyria, to Babylonia, and this. What?
Is that the time of Jeremiah?
It's a story that reminds us of the purification that went in the temple by King Yoshiyahu. That's mentioned in Melachim. Melachim Kings 2, chapter 23. But here it says that on the first day of the month of Nisan, this is in the previous chapter, chapter 29, they started purifying the temple because King Yehezkiah was the son of Ahaz, who was not very religious, whatever the term would be. And what they do is vayotziu et kol hatum'ah asher matzu bechal Hashem lachatzar bet Hashem. They took out all the impurity, which is a euphemism for idolatry. And we know that throughout the course of the two temples, more in the first temple than the second, it was turned into a house of idol worship.
More in the first and the second?
More in the first. The second. Second, we were like really reborn, you could call it. Yeah. So only when the Greeks brought their idols in the first temple, there are horrific description, especially in Ezekiel when in one.
Through the wall and
Yeah, God takes him to the wall, and he sees that the elders are in the temple, and they are bringing the incense, and the people are outside waiting for the incense to go through the chimney or the opening in the whatever it was in the wall in the roof. Meanwhile, he comes inside, and they see that they're all worshiping idols. All over the walls are engraved with images of idols. And idolatry ran very, very deep in ancient Israel. Very deep.
Sorry, where was this written?
That's in Ezekiel. And Yehezkel, I think it's chapter 13, but that, if you can, that'll be better than going through this. So, yeah, and we find it in Yirmiyahu also. Yirmiyahu speaks about how the men make the fire and the women bake special cakes that were burnt, and the children help them. Meaning, it's a whole
part of idol worship.
Part of idol worship. They do it as it's the whole PDA. They got together for a bake night, and but they do it in order to to worship idols. It's chapter 8 and 9 in Ezekiel, where he speaks about that. Okay, so let's move to the next source. We're just going through to see when someone is now going to later on write a Midrash on, let's say, the story of Pesach. There are a lot of things that this author could use from biblical sources, and we'll also see some external sources. So the next one is from Psalms 78, which in general describes the Exodus.
Maskil of Asaph, give ear, O my people, to my teaching, incline your ears to the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth with a parable. I will utter dark sayings concerning days of old. And they forgot his doings and his wondrous works that he had shown them. Marvelous things did he in the sight of their fathers in the land of Egypt, in the field of Zoan. He cleaved the sea and caused them to pass through, and he made the waters to stand as a heap. By day also he led them with a cloud, and all the night with a light of fire.
Okay, so this is from Tehillim. This is from Psalms. I skip the first couple of verses. We have the superscripture and the introduction where the poet says, I'm going to tell you a parable, a riddle. It was very common. It's like epic songs of the past, and the Exodus is definitely one of the stories that feature prominently in Tehillim. What we don't have in this psalm, I'll just comment. We move to the next source. We don't have a description of the legal practice again, and very, very rarely in Tehillim, if you find any reference to legal practices, there will be either discussing the sacrifices in general, those psalms that are related to the temple service, or what we call the moral of the prophets, Musar HaNevi'im, more the things that are really missing today from the I would say from the religious dialogue, in terms of when people come to talk about this is what the Torah wants us to do. business ethics, personal ethics, civility manners. I mean, the more the more orthodox you get, the less emphasis, unfortunately, there is on those things. But it's very essential to Tehillim, but not as much the legal practice we know today. So this is Psalms, another source that we will see later on was very favorite. Psalms are a favorite source to use for the Midrashic authors, because they have this technique, and this is we're starting to talk about the techniques of the Midrash. One of the techniques that the Midrashic rabbis used was called Mimerhak Tavi Lachma, based on the verse from Eshet Hayil. She brings her bread from afar. So the idea was that, just like when you walk into Whole Foods, and there's local bread, but then there's like artisan bread from France. Okay, that sounds interesting. Not necessarily better than the one you have here, but it gets your attention, right? That's something that I want to look into it. So this is what the rabbis did with the Midrash. The rabbi starts, everybody knows he's going to talk today, let's say, about the parasha of this week, Korah, right? The dispute between Korah and Moshe. And then he starts and says, and Korah took aside people. This is what the verse says in Psalms. My soul glorifies God. I'm not saying that there is a Midrash like that. I'm just made it up. But if you were sitting at the synagogue at the time, you're like, what? What is the connection, right?
Like the way that Midrash Rabbah is built is that you just suddenly
exactly like that, right? The P'tih Ta'od. So that's a common method, and usually it's Tehillim. Sometimes Mishlei, but the favorite is Tehillim because everybody knew Tehillim. People used to recite Tehillim, so you recite this pasuk and it's familiar. And you say, "But wait a second, I know this verse, and it comes from a different context, and it's not related to the parasha." So now you have no choice but to sit there and listen because you want to know how the rabbi is going, how the speaker is going to tie it into the.
So it's like suspense.
Suspense, right? This is exactly the trick. So we're looking at Tehillim, and now I'm going to read the Hebrew from the book of Jubilees, which is one of the books of the it's called the Apocrypha, the book that did not make it into the Bible.
Do the Christians have this in their Bible?
Yes, I know it's in the Bible, but I know that they had it in their literature. I'm not so sure about it. I won't say. But they're familiar with that, and they're familiar with many of the other, what we call the Apocrypha, the external books. There are a lot of literature discussing why they made it into or not. Recently, the JPS published a three-volume compilation of the most important works with translation
Apocrypha.
of the Apocrypha. Yes, some of the Dead Sea Sect, the Book of Jubilees, the Book of Ezra, the Book of Enoch or Hanoch, Tzavaat Bnei Yaakov, the will of the children of Yaakov. A lot of them bear similarity to biblical language, but you see the difference. So I'm not getting into the debate of exactly the codification of the Tanakh and when exactly each book made it in, but these books, we assume that most of the Apocrypha comes from the Greek period, from around the 4th to 2nd century before the Common Era. So the Hebrew sounds very much like the biblical Hebrew. ובימים אשר יבנה בית לשם השם בארץ נחלתם ילכו שמה ושחטו את הפסח בערב בבוא השמש בשליש היום ויעלו את הדם על כבש המזבח ושמו את חלבו על האש אשר על המזבח ואכלו את בשרו צלי אש בחצר בית המקדש בשם השם ועתה משה צו את בני ישראל ושמרו חוקת הפסח כאשר צוות לעשותו שנה ביומו בחג המצות ואכלו מצות 7 ימים לעשות חגו ולהביא קורבנו יום בשבעת ימי השמחה האלה. Okay, so that's the Hebrew. It sounds very biblical, right? We could have, I think, snuck it into one of our Torah readings and read it with the trope, and nobody would notice. So let's read the English. You want it?
Sure. And when a house is built for the name of the Lord in the land of their inheritance, They shall go there and slay the Passover in the evening at sunset, at the third part of the day. And they shall offer its blood on the threshold of the altar, and shall place its fat on the fire which is upon the altar. And they shall eat its flesh roasted with fire in the court temple in the name of the Lord. And you, Moses, command the children of Israel to observe the ordinances of the Passover, as it was commanded unto you, every year in its days, and the festival of unleavened bread. They should eat unleavened bread 7 days. They should observe its festival and bring a sacrifice every day during those 7 days of joy.
Okay. So from that reading, do you see anything which is significantly different than what we read in the Torah?
Much more detail.
Okay.
They talks about Pesach, the blood on the threshold. The content is that specific time of day.
More specific, right? The time of day already is more specific. Ba'erev vevo hashemesh bishlish hayom, on the third part of the day. Still doesn't tell us exactly when. And it also tells us where they're going to eat the meat. B'chatzar bet hamikdash. And the name of the Lord, Shem Hashem, B'Shem Hashem, is mentioned frequently. But it seems to be more or less in line with the Torah text. It's not the case with all of the Apocrypha, but most of it doesn't deal with halachic ordinances. So now we move from that, because this is not our focus. I just wanted to show you like the kind of the way the texts deal with different texts deal with Pesach. Now we're going to go into Midrash. Finally, this is a section from Midrash Halacha. So Midrash Halacha. Let us just talk about the word for a second. The word Midrash. How would you translate it today? First the vernacular, like explanation, story.
I just said to say without
To say,
To tell,
to give a sermon. Okay, so this is the way we use it today. Like the Devar Torah is called Darash, right? The rabbi gives a Darasha in the synagogue. But originally, the term meant something else. Definitely in the Tanakh. In the Tanakh, lidrosh means to seek, and to seek out, or to look for something, and we still have remnants of it in Hebrew. Like, for example, when when people say in Israel, "Timsor drishat shalom," do you know this term, drishat shalom or dash? Okay, so in Hebrew we say lidrosh bishlom someone. It means to seek out, to know. I want to know how that person is doing. That's the meaning of Dirisha.
To investigate the peace of someone. So
right. Sha'alu Shalom Yerushalayim.
go see if they're okay.
Yes. She'alna Shalom Achicha, like what Yaakov tells Yosef. Right. Same thing. Also in Tanakh, we speak about V'darashta, V'sha'alta V'hakarta Etev, that in case of a crime that has been committed, the Torah says you have to be Doresh, Shoel V'hoker, to seek out, to ask, and to investigate. So the word darash, this is in Deuteronomy 17:4. V'ugad lecha v'shamata v'darashta etev. You will inquire. So lidrosh is to inquire. So originally the word darash meant to inquire what is the meaning of the text. That's the most important thing maybe that we have to learn when we approach Midrash, is that was the original meaning of the text. What does the word mean? And in a sense, we are always and constantly we're engaged in midrashic activity. Anyone who speaks or listens or reads is really engaged in the activity of midrash, because we look at the text and we try to figure out what is the meaning of that text. It doesn't matter what it is. Could be instruction, could be fiction, or anything of the sort. We always try to figure out what does the text tell me. And I like to always bring simple example. from that little sign there, it says exit, that we automatically would think, okay, what does it mean? Let's say the first time you see a sign like that, does it mean, is it an imperative? Exit? In that case, I have to exit, I have to leave the room right away. Or it means there is an exit out there through which you could leave, right? It's descriptive and it's not an imperative.
But it's even more specific than that. In case of emergency,
Right.
when you have to exit,
Now that's
you can
context.
go through
Right.
that door, but
Exactly.
don't go through that door unless it's an emergency.
Right, exactly.
Very specific.
Very specific. So I like to play these games with my kids. Like we're driving on the highway, and I say, "Quickly, take your pad, your notepad and a pen." Why? It says draw a bridge. You have to draw a bridge. So, okay. But I do this because I want to put them in the mindset. Like you could, there are different meanings, double entendre to everything. That's why it's so difficult. Still working on the scientists are working on developing AI, artificial intelligence, because we have this ability, uncanny ability, to parse language and know exactly what is, approximately, what is the meaning of the speaker, right? Or to read. There was one case where one years ago, one phrase was that humans read right away with the right meaning was interpreted in more than 1,200 different ways by a computer.
What were the words?
900% of them were illegible. Doesn't matter. I have to pull it out. It's yeah. So now, when the rabbis approach the legal text, remember I said that originally Midrash was only on legal text and not on the non-legal text, because the legal text was more important in people's eyes. Even today, recently there was in America a debate about the Common Core. Anyone was following what Common Core was? Common Core was a suggestion to do more non-fiction and less fiction in English. Yes. My daughter wrote a paper on it for school. She was very passionate about it because I also pushed her to do that. But she did her own thing, where she argued that that fiction is extremely important, and you learn things through fiction that you cannot learn from nonfiction, and it actually expands your horizon and your mind and all that. But depends who you ask. Do you ask the person who's learning, an educator, a parent, or someone at the university who wants people who could follow exactly, or tasks for the industry and so on? Yeah, it's horrible.
It's science fiction. It's like post-apocalyptic science fiction.
We're in a way post-apocalyptic because our whole educational system is a product of the Industrial Revolution school system. They taught okay, we'll work on it in a different occasion. But we'll see later on. It's really interesting. Remember I said that Midrash keeps evolving in an amazing pace, and part of it is because people always felt this natural attraction to the more creative material, to poetry, to fiction, to the prophecies. And as much as the legal text was interesting, when there was too much emphasis on the legal aspects, there was a pushback. And we'll see it later. One great example is the time of Maimonides, following the period of the Gaonim in Babylonia, when there was a lot of emphasis on codification of the law, and Maimonides comes out with philosophical works and logic and reason, and everything is codified and written very, very clearly. Right after this, the whole Jewish world is plunged into the world of Kabbalah, of mysticism, and the Zohar. And the Zohar, really what it does, it brings back life or emotion in poetry into halakha, because it does care about halakha. It is concerned about.
It makes it more exciting.
It makes it more exciting, right?
Makes it more human.
More exciting, more human. All of the above, right?
People are drawn to that.
Right. So now that we've said that, let's see how the Midrash draws. It's what the Midrash tries to do. It tries to seek the meaning of the word and draw it out, to pull it out of the biblical text. So ideally, the goal is start from the word, from the biblical text, and arrive at the law, the intention of the lawgiver. In reality, in most cases, it's the law is already given, either by practice or by legislation, a majority opinion, and we're trying to find a proof from the text. It's a reverse process. I already know what I have to do, but I need to show you that it's written in the pasuk. But right now, this is not the case. We'll see it later. So this is from the Mechilta de Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai on Shemot, on Exodus 12:8. On Exodus, we have two books called Mechilta. Mechilta literally means in Aramaic tractate. So it's a tractate. It's a Mechilta. It's a volume of commentary on the Torah that up until recently there was great confusion regarding that text because it was not cohesive, and only maybe in the last 100 years scholars found out that we actually have two Mechiltas. One is attributed to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who was a student, disciple of Rabbi Akiva, and the other one is attributed to Rabbi Ishmael, who was the opponent of Rabbi Akiva, and they had different approaches to the interpretation of the text, and two different schools. We could say that the ruling school today is the one that we have here, Rabbi Akiva and his disciple Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. I hope that we'll be able to address it in the future, but this is really more Midrash Halacha and not Agadah.
What was the second one? Rabbi?
Ishmael, yeah. So let's read now the pasuk. We read. Anyone wants to read the Hebrew and then
Sure.
Hebrew and English? Go ahead, Josh. Yeah, and the English.
Right, they shall eat. Eating cannot be less than the kazait, olive.
An olive, right? An olive's worth of. Okay.
And they're talking about matzah, I'm assuming.
No, it's a basar. It's the meat.
Oh, wheat of the flesh. Okay. It's a basar. Below mean atzmot. Below mean idim. Below mean
Karnaim.
Karnaim. Below mean
Tlafayim. Yeah.
Not the sinews or bones, horns, or hooves.
Sinews.
Yeah.
Sinews.
Sinews.
Sinews. Yeah.
Yeah, I get really crazy because I can't do the Hebrew, so whenever anybody messes up in English, I'm like, bounce! Sinews.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. When did it ever occur to someone to eat bones, horns, or hooves?
Maybe if they're really
To
hungry.
eat them?
To eat them.
Well, at least you know. I mean,
Are they even
East
edible?
Asia?
Are they even edible? Yeah, rhinoceros horn. They grind it to powder
Or they gnaw,
because
they gnaw on it.
yeah.
I mean, like pig's feet?
Pig's feet, exactly.
Pig's
That's what I was
feet?
thinking.
Yeah,
And they
but
slice them up really thin.
oh, God.
they're not really.
This is why I'm kosher.
Yeah, they're not really
Did you
pigs.
spend time in Korea?
They're piglets. Really, really. No, and one time I remember I was in the store. I touched the jar to see it. I still regret it because this was slime. Whatever. No, but you understand my question.
He just touched it. You didn't eat it.
No, but there was like
Why
the,
include it if you can't eat it? You mean?
no, it was exactly. But here in the pasuk, why do you have to say don't eat the bones, don't eat the sinews, don't eat? Okay, that I understand. You know,
Doesn't count.
sinews are are really non-edible. It's like just gum.
You can suck
Bones,
marrow out of
right? Bone marrow you can suck, but horns, hooves, who eats that? Okay, now never mind. Let's go to the next. Balayla hazeh.
אמר רבי אלעזר בן עזריה, מה לילה הזה הנאמר למיתה
למטה.
עד חצות, אף לילה הזה הנאמר כן עד חצות.
Okay.
So Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah says it is written here on this night and elsewhere, and I shall pass through the land of Egypt in this night, just as there until midnight, so here until midnight.
It's my topic, by the way. It's on this night. Sorry. Yeah. I will explain what it means.
I said
Okay.
again,
Tzeli esh. The next Hebrew phrase.
V'lo tzli
Shapud.
Shapud. V'lo tzli askala.
Mm-hmm.
not roasted on a spit, and not roasted on a grill, and not roasted in an earthenware oven, which will cause problems later when we have a debate about that.
Right.
Al matzot umarorim, liva, marorim, harava.
Harbe. That's it. You don't have to. In the plural.
Hatzeret.
No, it doesn't matter the names. In the plural.
In the plural because it includes many species.
Okay.
Of these different types.
Okay. So first, before we go into analyzing each paragraph, what is the overall impression of this text? This is the Midrash Halacha. Yes.
It's very specific.
It's very, very specific. But now, you know what, just for practice.
Level, specific at a word level.
Right. So now, go back 1 second to the first page, right? And look at at verse 8. ואכלו את הבשר בלילה הזה, צליאש ומצות, על מאורים יאכלו. Right? Now look at page 4 and read only the bold letters.
Right.
ואכלו את הבשר בלילה הזה, צליאש, על מצות ומאורים. Right, every single word, and this is also the way that people used to study Tanakh, Torah. You see with the
Rashi, sure.
yes, Rashi later on, the greatness of Rashi is that he took a familiar method and reinvented it. I mean, he reworked it for his needs, and he wrote his commentary is very fluid, is very easy to read. You feel like it's it just flows with the text. It's 95% Midrash. You should know.
Yeah.
Rashi is 95% Midrash. We'll get to it later on. But this is the way people used to study. You sit with the master, with the teacher, and you recite one word from the text, an explanation.
And this is just one commentary.
Right. No, so the Mechilta of Rabbi Ishmael is more or less the same.
Oh.
There are places where they deviate. The main difference between the school of Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Akiva and the school of Rabbi Ishmael is that this school that is presented here believed that each and every letter of the legal text in the Torah is there for a reason. Mm-hmm. They did not think that regarding the non-legal text. But even that was disputed by the school of Rabbi Ishmael. Rabbi Ishmael says, no, the Torah writes in the vernacular. It's called Dibra Torah Kilshon Bnei Adam. So for example, if the Torah says that if you find a wandering animal that belongs to your friend, it says Hashev Teshivenu Lo, you must return. Or some Humashim will translate, return, you shall return. That those words cause so much headache to the translators, really, to any language. How do you translate Hashev Teshivenu? Return it. And it's all over Tanakh. So Rabbi Shimon says very simply, this is a literary device. This is how you talk. When you want to emphasize something, this is how you say it. Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shimon said, no. God could have said just Hashivenu. Why repeat? I have to learn something from it. What do I learn? That if you return the animal to your friend and it ran away, return it again. Return it again. Even 100 times. Even though your friend is negligent, he doesn't care, he just sits there, he doesn't fix his fence, he drinks all day, and his animal just go roam freely, you are still obligated to return it to him. Rabbi Ishmael disagrees. So this is where they part ways. Interestingly enough, the Jewish world adapted the method of Rabbi Ishmael and Rabbi Akiva, which sees meaning in every letter, which makes it very complicated. Why did we do so? It's not written anywhere that this should be the ruling method, but we did that because it is more interesting. It's fun, right? No, and it also makes the text worthwhile, because if you tell me, there's a reason, why this was written, right? People do it with fiction also. Douglas Adams wrote in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy that finally they find the computer that can answer the question,
the meaning of life.
The meaning of life. And what is the answer?
42.
It's 42. Why 42?
I don't know the
You know how much was written about those the 42?
He just made it up.
He made it up completely.
Yeah, but people's probably.
But they want to have
books
meaning,
about it.
right?
Yeah.
They wrote books, right? He almost committed suicide because of that.
Oh my God!
No, I'm joking.
Really?
He didn't. Like, but he was so upset with it. Then he made up something on it.
Himself
But
after the fact.
so, in any case, we see that this is the method. You take the text, "Ve'achlu et habasar balayla zetz liyesh al matzot umorim," and you break it down. "Ve'achlu" this way, "et habasar" that way. So, and it's all in a way that I want to narrow the text to its most precise meaning. So, "Ve'achlu," eating. What is eating?
How much?
How much? Right? Say it has to be at least kazait. You know what happened in the following generations? People ask the next question. How much is a kazait? What if their olive was not the size of my olive, right? Is it a manzanillo or kalamata? Is it with the pit, without the pit? Right? So today you have an app. You could snap a picture and it will tell you if it's a kazait or not.
Seriously?
Yeah. That is serious. I'm serious. Yeah, I had to write a long article before Pesach telling people that eating matzah on Pesach means eat what you consider to be eating. Because usually you wouldn't eat less than half a volume of your thumb, which is the size of an olive. And if you can't eat that, then we have a problem. I mean, not you. It means that you can't eat, so it's fine. God is not upset with you. But people around Pesach, some people go crazy because I had a situation where I had people around my table who insisted that they must eat for each one of there were 3 times that you have to eat the kazait, 2 matzahs. Yes, and they could not be watered down, so they had to be dry. So the definitions just go on and on. But anyway, this is the method of Midrash Halacha. Ve'achlu, definition. Then et habasar. So, what is called flesh? What is called meat? Now,
I have a question. Can we backtrack?
Yes.
I thought you said that they shall eat refers to the meat.
oh no, yeah. In this case, the meat. It's just that today we don't eat Pesach. We only have matzah, right? But if we would have had it, we would have the same debate. Even worse.
Okay. So the matzah takes the place.
Yes,
Would have
exactly.
been like before it's cooked or after it's cooked. Or
Yeah.
Depends on how it's cooked. What do you cook it in?
Oh, right. They would say right. We have closely something close here. So it's habasar. So let's say we didn't have the midrash. So if I would tell you have to eat the pesach and you have to add the meat, would you?
What olive is as big as a slice of matzah? I've never seen an olive this big.
No, if you crumble so it means really a little piece of the matzah. That's it.
No, I know, but the people at your table.
Oh. Don't forget it. It's not, halakha and logic.
Still on that, huh? Shane?
Halakha.
I was just looking. Okay.
I have to tell you that modern halakha and logic cannot coexist.
Never the twain shall meet.
Unfortunately, so we're working on it. It's that we have a long road ahead. Yes.
Oh, speaking of that, Rabbi, Tamara mentioned that you have a newsletter.
Yes.
Can
I'll give you the information. Yes. I just sent a piece about riding bicycle on Shabbat. So some people think it's the end of the world if they do that. But I'll tell you Midrash Agada Alcha. So at Abasar, the Midrash looks at the word the flesh, and wants to narrow it down. It means flesh and not something else. What is not included? Anything which is not flesh.
It doesn't say not fat.
What?
It doesn't say not fat.
So fat is included. Fat is part of it. But usually, when you roast something, no. When you roast it, it will melt away.
Oh.
Yeah. So they're talking about
They're keying in on the et. Is that what they're keying on?
of what?
The et.
Et habasar.
Et habasar.
Yes, et habasar. Right.
It's making this
The flesh only, and it's tied to the previous statement that you have to eat the kazait. So what if you ate half a kazait of meat and half of a kazait of bones.
You are
Not good, right? But don't worry. We'll see in the next part of when we go to the Mishnah that a lot of these discussions are theoretical. They were part of the intellectual gym that the rabbis were engaged in. So you get this is all theoretical, highly theoretical. Some of it is practical, but once you get into the mindset of analysis and nitpicking on every letter, then you just keep on doing it. So really, what they're trying to say, don't eat less than the kazait of the meat, which I think was anyway very difficult to do. Meaning, if you're at this celebration, people didn't eat that much meat, by the way, in biblical times, because meat was expensive. You wanted to keep your animals alive as long as they could work.
And it's not like they had refrigeration.
Exactly. So if you have this feast and they roast meat, you will eat kazait. Believe me, you will. You would not touch the bones or hooves or anything. But still, for the purpose of the intellectual analysis, we have that. Now here we come to a real problem. Balayla hazeh, they will eat the meat on that night. Amar Rabbi, so Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, and that's where we had a problem before when we looked at the English. It is written here on this night, and elsewhere it says, I shall pass through the land of Egypt on that night. It's on, right on this night. Just as there until midnight, so here until midnight. This is Binyan Av. We have one text which is not full, meaning that we don't have all details, and we have another text which has all details, or it's also called Gezerah Shavah.
Is that called Homer? What is it called?
No, it's not called a chomer.
It's Gezerah Shavah. Gezerah Shavah. Gezerah Shavah. So the Torah says in one place, you shall eat the meat on that night. So I would ask, what is the definition of night? You would answer, without the text, what is the definition of night?
When you can see 3 stars in the sky.
That's halachic. What is your definition of night?
When the sun goes down.
All the way down.
Okay, and when does it end? Good enough, right? And if you're a little concerned, you start a little later and you finish a little earlier. This way you're in the safe space in between, right?
Yeah.
But there's a lot of literature around that. And Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, wait a second. Previously, the Torah says that God is going to come through the land of Egypt on that night. And over there, it's midnight. So he says, just as there, night means up until midnight, so also here, night is only until midnight.
Which source says midnight?
On chapter 12.
What did you say that
And
Gezerah Shavah? I just got it.
Gezerah Shavah. Gezerah Shavah means it comes from, like, the word to cut with the Gezerah. I mean, it's cut from the same cloth, basically. Scissors, right?
Oh, because one place says on this night, then the other. It
Yes.
has to be the same.
Right. So, where it says, "Ve'avarti be'eretz Mitzrayim b'layla hazeh," it's on chapter 12, verse 12. It's a little ahead. This is on 12:8, and this is 12:12. Little problem. When God says, "I will pass through Egypt on that night at midnight," so does it mean from the beginning of the night till midnight, or only at the moment of midnight? I would say that it's the latter. It's only at the moment of midnight. So if Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah really wants to stick to his interpretation, he must say you could only eat the meat at midnight, right? I mean, if you take the legal details on one verse and you apply them to the other, so you say, okay, here God passes through Egypt at midnight, so I would also be allowed to eat the meat at midnight. Instead, he says, over there, the word midnight is associated with the word night. So night is only up till midnight, and after midnight, it's non-night. And so this also will apply here. So obviously, there's another example of halakha that's already set. Because the Torah says you could eat it at night, but this is sort of a fence. We want to make sure that you finish by midnight. right?
So wait, so this is saying basically in chapter 12, verse 12, we have a reference to night that can be interpreted as midnight.
Yes.
Where did they get? I'm looking at the verse.
We have.
Oh, because later, you have to know the whole chapter, because, no, in verse 12 it says, "V'avarti be'eretz Mitzrayim halayla hazeh," and then in verse 29 it says, "Vayi b'chatzi halayla," in the middle of the night.
29.
Okay, yeah, so it's
Because this said in 12.
Right. Okay, so the next verse tells
Sorry, this is Deuteronomy or Exodus?
Exodus.
Okay.
The next, so and it follows in that, right? Tzli esh velo tzli shaput velo tzli askala should be roasted in fire, and not on a spit, and not on a grill, and not on an earthenware oven, which doesn't really leave you many options of grilling it. How do you grill something not on a spit? So
That's a great question.
you have to hold it.
Well, yeah, but that doesn't. Even if you hold it over the fire, that's acting like a spit.
Right. So eventually, the conclusion was that it has to be a wooden spit. So, but in any case, this is the methodology of Midrash Halacha. Take the text, try to analyze it. The only place that we could say that the meaning is derived directly from the text is the next paragraph. Before that, ve'achlu was a legal definition. It's kazayit. Et basar is sort of narrowing down, using maybe here we're using exclusion to exclude that. Balayla hazeh is by comparison to another verse. Tzli esh is interpretive, not directly from the text. Al matzot u'merorim, the Midrash says, riba merorim arbe. Merorim is written in the plural. It means that you could take any species of maror, of bitter herbs that you want. And they mention here horseradish, lettuce, and others that still we have problems identifying. So this is, we went through different biblical texts and the Apocrypha. And then when we look at the Midrash Halacha, we see that the method is take a word, interpret, take a word, interpret. It's not always clear how you arrive from the word to the conclusion, and because of that, many later rabbis say that a lot of the Midrash Halacha is what we call asmachta, meaning the halacha was already decided, and the text was used as a support for that halacha. Okay.